everybody, Ellie here for WhoCulture. We have 10 days to go until season 2 airs, and we've had quite a bit of news and information released over the last week or so, so I'm just gonna jump around and cover a few of those things for you. So let's get straight into it. So first of all, we had the season 2 premiere in London this past Monday. Some of you may have seen I was very fortunate to have attended this premiere. That's about all I can say on the matter at this point in time. There is a Cyberman standing just off camera and he will shoot me if I say anything. So my lips are sealed. What I can say is that it was a thoroughly enjoyable evening. I met some very, very wonderful people. I was surrounded by so many familiar faces, felt a lot of imposter syndrome, but it was absolutely wonderful. Anita Dobson complimented my outfit, had a chat with Brian May. What more can you want in life, you know? I cannot wait to share with you my thoughts on the things that I did see and to talk to you all about season 2. But for now, just stay tuned. You're not ready for what's to come, and that is all I'm going to say on the matter. But something I can talk to you about, there was a new edition of SFX magazine released last week, and there were many pages talking about the upcoming season. I'm going to talk about just one thing that jumped out to me in the article, but of course make sure that you do go and get your hands on your own copy of the magazine. There's a link down below so you can get a copy of SFX magazine. Support physical media, people. But for now, let's just talk about this one section that I found very interesting. Now, it involves the Interstellar Song Contest, which is episode 6 of season 2. Now, this episode will air on the 17th of May. This will coincide with the real-life Eurovision Song Contest final, which also airs on the 17th of May. But not only that, we have the FA Cup final on the 17th of May. And herein lies the risk, is the word I think I would look for. Because both the FA Cup final and the Eurovision final are live events. And as it stands, Doctor Who is set to be sandwiched between those two live events. So we'll have the FA Cup final, we'll have Doctor Who, and then we will have the Eurovision final. However, because they are live, there could be an issue. If the FA Cup goes into extra time, that would usually mean that whatever follows the FA Cup or the football would be delayed, would be pushed back. Normally this wouldn't be a problem, but as I just mentioned, we also have Eurovision, which is also live. Which means that if the football goes into extra time, Doctor Who cannot fit in that gap any longer because it cannot be pushed back because it would then overlap with Eurovision, which is also live, so cannot be moved. And this is where the risk lies. But it turns out Russell T Davies is absolutely aware of this risk, and this is what he said about it in SFX magazine. It's going to be very, very interesting what happens. Honestly, that day it'll be like, are we transmitting or not? They did run this past me and say, do you want to take that risk? And I said, that's the sexiest effing risk I've ever heard in my life. Let's do it. So I mean, at least Russell T Davies is excited about this prospect. Now, if this does end up happening, of course, the episode will already have been released on BBC iPlayer in the UK earlier that day. So it's not that it won't be watchable, but it won't be transmitted in that Saturday night slot as it always has been, and it will likely be aired probably on the Sunday at some point. But it is certainly a risk, and I can see many viewers being annoyed by this if the episode ends up not being transmitted on the Saturday. Mostly because we do know that, you know, the whole streaming situation, the episode dropping on iPlayer earlier, has been an area of contention ever since it started happening, with some fans adamant that they would only watch it in the BBC airtime on Saturday evening, as it always has been. Is this an issue? I feel like this would have been a bigger issue before the age of streaming and the episode releasing on streaming earlier in the day. If that were the case, I honestly don't think they would have done it. I think if it was the case of it's going to transmit on this day and this is the only time it can transmit, it won't be available anywhere else, then I don't think Russell would have done it, because obviously he wants people to watch it. But I think, judging by the figures and all of those things, the majority of people now watch the episode on BBC iPlayer at a convenient time for them. You could still watch it at that time that it's supposed to air on iPlayer. You just can't watch it on BBC One if the football goes into extra time. Now, I know very little about football, but I have been informed by Danny, who does know things about football, that of the last 3 FA Cup finals, only one of those did go into extra time. So we may be stressing about nothing, and the football will finish when it's supposed to, and everything will be fine. But it is a risk, and I do find it interesting that it was a risk that Russell T Davies was ecstatic to take. Quite thrilling. Can see some people getting a little annoyed by it, though. What do you think? Now, the other thing that we have had is some new images released for Season 2, and one of them appears to show 15 and Ruby in what appears to be their Space Babies outfits. And Ruby seems to have some sort of green slime on her jacket and on her face, on her neck. Now, if you look closely here, at face value, it looks like the Space Babies outfit, but actually, if you look at the sleeves under Ruby's jacket and just below where the jacket is, it actually looks like the outfit that we see her wearing at the beginning of The Devil's Cord. So the plot thickens a little bit there. Now, it's quite interesting because usually with the Doctor having just one costume, it's hard to kind of pinpoint an episode that a picture might be from. But because the costumes change so frequently here, it's actually easier to identify what episode certain things might be from. But it is kind of, then maybe begs the question of why are they in those costumes and why does it look like they're in those, why does it look like we're going to Space Babies? So I would suggest that maybe we're going to have some flashbacks to Space Babies. The reason I'm saying this mostly is the green slime. If she was just wearing the same jacket or clothes, I'd be like, yeah, she doesn't own that many clothes. Most people reuse clothes. But because of the goo stuff, it kind of makes me think that we are purposely flashing back in some way to Space Babies. The other thing is that there's suggestion that are we going to fill in that kind of weird, confusing 6-month time gap that we had between Space Babies and The Devil's Cord. It's definitely raising some questions, especially because we know that Ruby is not in as many episodes and Belinda is kind of going to be in the first episode. So the question is, how does this all link together and what's going on? The other thing that I'm wondering is, are we going to see 15 doing a similar thing to what we saw 11 doing in Series 5, where he had to kind of relay some important information to his companion at an earlier point in time and kind of was going back on his own timeline? Don't have a lot of answers to those questions, but it's certainly an interesting image and does raise some questions. It might all turn out to be that Ruby just, I don't know, maybe she's got some paint on her. Maybe she's been babysitting and there's some paint on her face and she reuses clothes like most people do. Who knows? The other thing that sent everyone into a frenzy over the last couple of days, and something I can 100% confirm because I was in the room, Michelle Gomez and Joe Martin were at the Season 2 premiere. Can 100% confirm because Michelle Gomez walked past me and I did a double take because I thought it was a bit strange. And I didn't think it was her to start with, and I kind of went, is that Michelle Gomez? It was indeed Michelle Gomez. Joe Martin was also stood in very close proximity to me. It was a surreal experience. Now, does it mean anything that they were at this premiere? Probably not. Now, the thing is, Carol Ann Ford was at the Star Beast premiere back in 2023, and it turned out to just be that Carol Ann Ford was at the premiere because, you know, it was Doctor Who, she's part of the Doctor Who family. But in hindsight, it feels like actually she was there as a massive red herring to kind of further fuel this theory that everybody had about Susan Triad being Susan Foreman. Very clever on their part if they actually did that intentionally, as opposed to saying, hey, do you want Carol Ann Ford? Do you want to come to the premiere? And it's not uncommon for past companion actors, past actors, friends of the show to attend events about the show. Just because you're not in it anymore doesn't mean you're just cut from the family. So, I mean, why not invite Michelle Gomez and Joe Martin to the premiere? If they're around, if they want to come, sure, why not? You're part of the Who family. Come along. Doesn't have to mean anything. I guess also, if they were going to be some surprise appearances in Season 2, would they invite them to the premiere, or would that be really obvious? I feel like if they were in it, they'd be less likely to be at the premiere because them being in attendance has sent everyone to assume that they're gonna be in it. That feels like a real unceremonious reveal. It feels very much like we didn't think this through. But here's the thing. It could make sense for them to be in the upcoming season. Let's look at Michelle Gomez. Let's look at Missy, for starters, okay? We know, first of all, that the Master is out there, trapped inside that gold tooth. So Missy could be the Master that's inside that tooth. We don't know what version of the Master was trapped. Could just as easily be Missy. Also, the hand that picked up that gold tooth had red fingernails. Guess who else has red fingernails? They've done it on purpose, I tell you. It would be pretty cool if that was the whole situation. Missy is returning. Do I think it's happening? No. Do I hope it's happening? Kind of, yeah. And as for Joe Martin, well, actually, if you think about it, Russell T Davies has been leaning into the Timeless Child arc in his new seasons way more than we expected him to do. We all went in thinking that they might address it. Based on things Russell himself said, they might address it a bit, but then they're moving on. They seem to be going back to it quite often. It does seem to be more relevant than we were led to believe it might be. So I wouldn't actually be that surprised if we saw Joe Martin pop up. If the Fugitive Doctor did appear, based on how much of the Timeless Child arc has been carried into this new era, it wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't shock me. Now, it would need to be a good story and not just feel forced. But I wouldn't be surprised by that. In fact, of the two, I would be more likely to think that Joe Martin is going to appear than Michelle Gomez. And then, of course, we then have to look on the flip of it. Again, Joe Martin, big part of the Whoniverse. She's recently been kind of in the spotlight because she's just launched her own series for Big Finish, all about the Fugitive Doctor. So, you know, again, she's part of the Doctor Who family, so makes sense that she would be at a Doctor Who event. I'm pretty sure there are lots of people who have been in Doctor Who in the past that were invited to this event and just couldn't make it. I'm not gonna lie, I was looking out for my pal Alex Kingston. Was she there? No, she wasn't. Made me a bit sad. But I don't doubt that she probably was invited. You know? So I feel like maybe we're reading a little bit too much into this, but that's what we live for. That's what we're here to do. But anyway, I digress. We've got 10 days to go until season 2 airs. Very excited for these upcoming episodes. Maybe we'll see Missy, maybe we'll see the Fugitive Doctor. Who knows? Maybe episode 6 won't even transmit on the BBC that night. There's so many things coming and I'm so excited about it. Just let me know your thoughts on all of these things I've spoken about in the comments down below. I want to know what you're thinking, what you're feeling, and nobody badger me for spoilers because I don't want to be shot by the Cyberman.